Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Cold Case Christmas. In this series I'm going to be overviewing a different cold case every day in December to raise awareness for these cases and to bring those names to light, many of whom have been long forgotten. There'll be some more recent cases as well as those that go much further back. In episode 1, we're going to be looking at the disappearance of Genette Tate. Genette Tate is an English girl aged 13 at the time of her disappearance, and she went missing when she was delivering newspapers. Let's get into Genette's story. On August 19th, 1978, Genette disappeared while delivering copies of a newspaper called the Exeter Express, an Echo newspaper. She lived in Devon, which is in the southwest of England. Genette was living in the small village of Aylesbury, about 10 miles east of the larger city of Exeter. She was actually born in Somerset in Taunton, but her parents split and she went to live in Devon with her dad. Genette had an unremarkable life. She lived in a farm cottage with her dad, his partner Violet, and Violet's teenage daughter Tanya. She attended Exmouth Comprehensive School about 10 miles from her home. She enjoyed school, she was very intelligent, she was great at maths, and she just amazed the family from a young age about how intelligent she was. She was a sweet girl as well. She loved animals, she loved writing, she loved poetry. She was curious about the world, she was excited about her life. And there was nothing that would suggest that Genette was just going to disappear off the face of the earth. Aylesbury was small. It changed little in many centuries. Like many towns and villages in Devon, its population was a mixture of retired people, farming families who'd lived on the land for years. Some commuters had started to move into the area because in 1975, just 3 years before Genette disappeared, the M5 motorway was completed about 5 miles to the east, placing Aylesbury, which was little more than a country lane and some cottages and a church. It linked it to the national main roads, and whether that was something to do with her disappearance, we don't know, but it's just worthy of note. It was a very rural environment, lovely place to grow up, and absolutely no suggestion that there would be a predator lurking around the corner. But it seems that that's exactly what happened to Genette. Genette Tate disappeared on Withen Lane, about 100 metres from the centre of Aylesbury. There was nothing exceptional about August the 19th. It was just a regular day. Genette's dad, John, left the house at 7:30 to take Violet to work at the hospital in Exeter. He was back home for 10 a.m. He made Genette and her stepsister breakfast. Tanya was ready to go on a fortnight's holiday with her birth father to Cornwall. And at 12:20 p.m, John drove Tanya and her boyfriend to Exeter to catch a coach to get to Cornwall, leaving Genette alone at home. And that was the final goodbye. He would never see her again. Genette set off from her farm cottage sometime after 2 p.m. to deliver copies of the Express and Echo newspapers. She was riding her blue bike. She rode through Aylesbury along Withen Lane. It was busy with holiday traffic, and that's another important thing to highlight here, that August in the UK is the height of the holiday season. Devon does attract a lot of out-of-towners, as does its surrounding counties of Cornwall and Somerset. Absolutely beautiful part of the UK. And a lot of people go down to Devon, Cornwall, Somerset. It's on the southwest coast. It's the warmest part of the UK. And in summer, it's absolutely stunning. Beautiful countryside, beautiful beaches. Whether that was something to do with Genette's disappearance, we don't know. But she collected her bundle of papers from the delivery van and began her round. This was actually her last day on the paper round. She'd been doing the same round for about a week. She was standing in for the main paper boy who was doing something else that week, so she'd agreed to do his round for him. By 3:15 p.m, Genette had travelled about 2/3 of the way down Withen Lane, having delivered about 14 newspapers. At a small bridge across Withen Lane, she met by chance two of her friends, Margaret Heavey and Tracy Pratt. The three girls chatted and started to walk back towards Aylesbury together. Genette pushed her bike up a small slope, and at the top of the incline, Genette got back on her bike and cycled ahead to carry on delivering her newspapers. Maggie and Tracy lost sight of her and didn't think anything of it. They just carried on talking and chatting on that beautiful summer's afternoon. The lane bent out of view, and that last sighting of Genette going around the corner was the last anyone ever saw of Genette. Between 5 and 10 minutes later, Margaret and Tracy, who had been walking slowly, came across Genette's bike in the road. It was on its side with newspapers spilled out of the basket, like Genette had fallen off or was dragged off suddenly. They didn't hear anything though. They began calling her name, looking over the hedgerows into the fields, but there was no response. So they thought it was strange, and they took Genette's bike back home. Genette's dad said Genette's friends came up to the road to say that they couldn't find Genette, and that they were bringing her bike back. John went back with them to Withen Lane to see where they'd last seen her. They all started looking along the hedgerows, in the fields. Had Genette injured herself somewhere and was in a ditch? But no. So after a short time of looking and becoming increasingly panicked, Violet said to John, "Look, we better call the cops here." And that was the beginning of a missing persons search that has extended all the way from August 19th, 1978. And it's the largest and the longest ever investigation mounted by Devon and Cornwall Police. It's a very low crime area, Devon and Cornwall. The police response to Genette's disappearance was swift. It was well resourced. Within a couple of hours of the report, they had uniformed officers, they had an RAF search team, so Royal Air Force search team, they had search and rescue helicopter roaring overhead. It was the days before drone technology and heat-seeking technology and things like that, but still, it was an extensive search. John and Violet were absolutely bewildered, panicked, just in a state of frenzy. Just the scene of this search and rescue operation through the lanes, through the fields, in the sky. Incredible effort by Devon and Cornwall Police. But nobody knew what happened to Genette. Margaret and Tracy were the last people to see her in this world, and they heard nothing, as if someone had just grabbed her, put their hand over her mouth and grabbed her. Her bike falling on the floor, the newspapers spilling out. Was she the victim of a robbery, a kidnapping? Clearly not an accident, because they'd have found her. But nothing. One of the detectives on the case just said we had nothing to go on. Nothing at all to go on. Police searched the village. They went door to door. They moved their search out. And within the first week, they'd covered a lot of ground, but still absolutely nothing. And there's still nothing. There was one witness to seeing the girls talking near that bridge on Withen Lane, and this was Matilda Rogers. She was a policeman's wife from Hull in Yorkshire, and she was there with her daughter on holiday in Devon. As I said, it's a tourist area, it's the height of summer, there's a lot of people from all over the UK who go to Devon. I've been to Devon myself on holidays, I've been to Cornwall on holidays, it's beautiful. So they came forward, Matilda and her daughter Gail, and said they'd seen the three girls in the lane chatting, they'd seen Genette shortly before she disappeared, and they'd also seen a man in a car. Matilda told the police that on that crucial day, she and Gail had been walking back from Aylesbury towards their holiday home on Withen Lane when they'd seen Genette and her two friends on the bridge. They then carried on walking away, nothing untoward, nothing unusual, nothing strange, but they do know, having seen a man driving a maroon-coloured car, it was heading along Withen Lane in the direction of the 3 girls, and it would have had to pass them. Withen Lane is just a little single-track country lane. Genette might have had to move for the car to pass. The information provided by Matilda and Gail was regarded as the most credible information. In fact, it was the only information that they had to go off, and it became the dominant force of the investigation for many years. Now, it's not the only theory of what happened to Genette. There are theories out there. There's a lot of discussion about this case, but this is the most likely lead. Matilda and Gail were able to give a rough description of the man they saw, and that was circulated, but nothing. They looked at sex offenders, they looked at holidaymakers, they looked at every possible angle, and to this day, absolutely nothing. Sex offenders appeared to have alibis. There was national appeal in the press. This is a very well-known case in the UK. I don't know whether many of you guys from overseas will know this case, but it's very well known in the UK. If you talk about missing children or missing persons in the UK, Genette Tate isn't far from people's minds. I was a child of the 70s. I remember talking about Genette Tate, hearing about Genette Tate when I was a child. So police were convinced that somebody had abducted Genette. It was the most likely outcome, that she'd been picked up and transported, murdered, most probably. Now, in 1990, 12 years after Genette disappeared, a man was arrested in Scotland after abducting a child, and his crimes were so abominable that he truly warranted the term monster. This was Robert Black. He was born in 1947, given up by his mother when he was 6 months old. He was abused sexually by his foster father, put into care at 11 when his foster mother died, abused by staff while he was in care of the state. He was a very mixed up individual. He worked as a butcher, so he knew how to handle dead bodies, and he became a prolific abuser of young girls. He was convicted of a sex attack when he was just 17 years old. He lived in the south of England, but his work took him all over the UK. His preferred method of abduction was to leave the main roads and snatch a child in a small rural village where nobody would see him, no witnesses. Now, as I said right at the beginning of this piece, Aylesbury is very close to the then newly constructed M5 motorway, linking the southwest, the rural areas, to the rest of the UK. Was Robert Black the responsible person for Genette Tate? In 1994, he was convicted of the kidnap, the rape and the murder of 3 girls and sentenced to life in prison. But he's never admitted, never confessed to anything to do with Genette Tate. They questioned him about it, but he never implicated himself. Was it Robert Black? We don't know. There's no happy ending to Genette's case. A body has never been found. And in spite of gallant efforts by the police, nobody knows what happened in Withen Lane on August 19th, 1978. So that's Genette's story. Very sad. You know, this was the day before DNA collection was a thing. I don't think we'll ever know what happened to Genette Tate. But let me know your comments down below. I've been Michelle. I hope you're well. And I'll see you soon in the next episode of Cold Case Christmas. Bye, guys.